discovered the incredible truth. Neighbor's warning exposed hidden danger I never expected. Emily sat at her dining table, bills strewn around her like a scatter of fallen leaves, lesson plans curving into neat piles beside them. The comforting scent of chicken casserole wafted through the air, a dinner she hoped would stretch another night's meal. Despite establishing herself as a dedicated first-grade teacher, shadows of doubt danced in her mind. Could she really provide a secure future for Mia and Noah? The idyllic atmosphere of their quaint suburb felt suffocating under the pressure of whispers, judgment brewing with every glance. She yearned to break the cycle of her past, a high school dropout turned educator, but the memories of those condescending voices still echoed. If only they could see her now. A knock jolted her from her spiraling thoughts. With a frown, she opened the door to find Mr. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who often talked about the neighborhood's golden days. His face betrayed worry, a stark contrast to the summer smile she'd grown accustomed to. "Emily, you need to listen to me," he said, urgency seeping into his voice. "Maplewood Academy. It's not what it seems." Her stomach twisted at the mention. Mia and Noah had been buzzing with excitement about the school, their dreams buoyed by visions of endless possibilities. But face to face with Mr. Thompson's grave expression, unease pulsed through her entire being. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "The finances are a mess. Parents don't know, and I fear for the kids' safety. It's all a facade, Emily," he continued, his eyes unwavering. She felt herself hesitate, a chill creeping up her spine. Could she bear to crush her children's dreams, yet again? Disbelief sparked questions in her mind. Was Mr. Thompson being paranoid, or was this truth she had to uncover? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her mind raced as dread coiled around her heart. Research beckoned, a journey she hadn't anticipated but desperately needed. The idea of uncovering the possible hazards of a place that symbolized so much for her children was daunting. As each conversation unfolded, ominous whispers of problems emerged. Educational neglect and secrecy layered deep beneath Maplewood's pristine front. Parental opinions collided. Friends rallied behind her, while others deemed her caution unfounded. Emily battled fury and frustration, questioning her resolve. Was her protective instinct worth risking friendships? That night, lies and truths ebbed and flowed in her thoughts, refusing to settle. Just as she wrestled with doubt, images of her late father's battle against similar injustices surged forward. He didn't just fight for education. He fought fiercely for what was right. A history she'd barely acknowledged, yearning for respect from a past that haunted her. Could she really risk everything for truth? As Emily braced herself for the upcoming school board meeting, every fiber in her body trembled with apprehension. Voices in the room would rise, each one a catalyst for the reckoning ahead. The stakes escalated with every heartbeat. She could feel the weight of her father's legacy crushing down upon her, urging her to rise. The moment she opened her mouth to deliver her truth, the chairwoman's voice cut through the tension. A revelation that would flip Emily's world, and perhaps her hidden struggles, upside down. The truth was about to surface, but at what cost? Would she reclaim her family's honor, or would the fear of confrontation hold her hostage yet again? Emily stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding in sync with the ticking clock on the wall. The school board's chamber, decorated with bright banners proclaiming educational excellence, suddenly felt like a cage. Each face in the audience was scrutinizing her, hopes mingling with skepticism, As the chairwoman's voice hung in the air, she inhaled deeply, steeling herself against the wave of uncertainty. Amidst the confident resolve of her colleagues, Emily's voice broke through the surface. "I just want to say," she began, each word slow and deliberate, "that we must consider the safety and well-being of our children at Maplewood Academy." The spotlight felt heavy on her shoulders. What had started as a simple expression of concern now morphed into a battle for integrity. But integrity couldn't anchor her if she faltered. The chairwoman's brow furrowed as she eyed the files in front of her. Empathy, fear, and courage wrestled within Emily as the chamber erupted into murmurs. She'd expected the resistance, a palpable wall of discomfort, but the reality was sharper than she envisioned. "I found financial discrepancies and testimonials from parents who fear for their kids." Emily pressed on, her voice beginning to climb towards a crescendo. The tension in the air thickened. She retrieved her research, prepared to back her claims with evidence, her palms clammy against the folders. The echoes of her past, memories of being dismissed because of her background, flared once more. With every piece of data, she recalled her father's struggles for justice and an effective education, folding those lessons into her resolve. If he could find strength in opposition, surely she could pierce through the doubts that bound her. Yet, as she articulated her concerns, a flicker of fear ignited within her, questioning whether she'd entered a firestorm without forethought. The chairwoman maintained a steely facade, but the room crackled with energy. "These accusations are serious, Emily. Do you understand the weight of what you're suggesting?" "Yes, I do," she asserted, emboldened by the weight of her children's futures hanging in the balance. "But we cannot ignore what's in front of us." With the meeting closing in on opposition, Emily stated, "If the foundation of this academy isn't genuine, how can we stand by while parents invest everything in it?" She sensed a shift, a tightening in the crowd as hesitance morphed into support for her cause. But then someone in the back shouted, "You're sabotaging our children's hopes!" The words hit her like a physical blow. That voice represented everything she feared: doubt, resentment, and the risk of permanent alienation from her peers. Every fiber of her being screamed to waver, to apologize, to retreat back into safety. But there was Mia, her daughter's face flashing before her, eyes hopeful, innocent, still trusting in the systems designed for her security. Determination sparked anew within Emily. "I'm fighting for those hopes! I refuse to stand by while we turn a blind eye!" The chamber reacted, eyes darting between her and the chairwoman. A ripple of anxiety coursed through her, but along with it came a sense of empowerment. She was no longer the girl haunted by her past. She was a mother, a teacher, and, most importantly, a voice for the voiceless. "Consider this my plea," Emily concluded, hoping to create a bridge now forming across the boardroom. Yet, as the meeting adjourned, unease settled heavily on her shoulders. Although she had sparked a conversation, would it be enough to initiate real change? As she exited, the weight of the room lingered in her mind, more than mere emotion. It was an unspoken promise that confrontation would come at a price. Emily realized that the speculation she feared most was still embedded within her. The question wasn't just about Maplewood. It was about whether she could confront her own vulnerability. With every step toward the exit, the unseen threads of courage and fear pulled tighter. What revelations awaited her on the other side of this storm? Would her truth be a catalyst for transformation, or would it pull her back under the shadows of doubt? What she knew for certain was that the battle had just begun, and the struggle to redefine her legacy was far from over. Emily stood alone in the hallway, the murmurs of the departing crowd echoing in her ears, a chaotic symphony of praise, criticism, and uncertainty. She leaned against the cool wall, wrapping her arms around herself as if to shield against the onlookers' opinions still swirling within her mind. Each heartbeat whispered her insecurities, and the adrenaline that had propelled her through the meeting now began to drain from her body, leaving her hollow. What had felt like a monumental step forward now teetered on the edge of chaos. The board's divided reaction haunted her. Had she only succeeded in alienating herself from her peers? The temptation to retreat to the shadows beckoned like a warm blanket, comforting but suffocating. Emily inhaled deeply, focusing solely on the rhythmic rise and fall of her breath. She needed clarity, not just for herself but for the families counting on her to be their advocate. Turning on her heel, she exited the building, letting the evening breeze wash over her as darkness gathered in the sky. Her thoughts spiraled through the events of the night, dissecting each confrontation and searching for a glimmer of hope amidst the rubble of doubt. She had taken a plunge, but had made it shallow with half-hearted thoughts. Stepping into her car, Emily felt a sudden inclination to dig deeper. The thought of financial discrepancies ignited something within her. Her curiosity morphed into a burning need to unearth the truth further. She'd been gathering evidence, but it was time to widen the search, to bypass the confines of her comfort zone. That night, insomnia haunted her while silent arguments left her restless. What if the board's negligence ran deeper than she imagined? In the shadows of her mind, the questions multiplied. Who else could she speak to? What other secrets were lurking behind Maplewood's polished reputation? One name came to mind. Mrs. Henderson, an older teacher known for her candor. If anyone could shed light on the undercurrents at Maplewood, it would be her. The following morning, Emily stood in front of Mrs. Henderson's classroom, steeling herself against a wave of apprehension. She knocked hesitantly, but the gentle, "Come in," invited her inside. Mrs. Henderson was arranging books on a shelf, and the sight of the cluttered room sent a rush of nostalgia through Emily. It reminded her of her own days in school, when rooms had felt more like sanctuaries than battlegrounds. "Emily, it's good to see you," Mrs. Henderson said, her face brightening with a smile that belied the seriousness of the moment. "Thank you for seeing me, Mrs. Henderson," Emily replied, her voice firming. "I need to talk to you about something troubling at Maplewood." As the two women delved into a conversation, Emily listened intently, noting every word and nuance. Mrs. Henderson's accounts revealed concerns that were more than casual grumblings. There were whispers of management misappropriation and unresolved complaints from parents and teachers alike. "This system is flawed, Emily," Mrs. Henderson said, her eyes glistening with concern. "But people are scared to speak out. We've been conditioned to think our voices don't count." Emily felt the weight of those words settle deep within her. There was a community pulse she felt had been absent since her arrival, one stifled by fear. The truth wasn't just an individual battle. It would require collective courage. What if her voice turned into a rallying call, igniting others to confront their fears? Leaving the classroom, a spark of determination ignited within her. The path she was on was tougher than she anticipated, but she recognized the tug of responsibility. Invigorated by Mrs. Henderson's stories, she realized she wasn't alone. A flicker of hope began to shine through the cracks of doubt, but as she prepared to step back into the fray, an unsettling thought crossed her mind. What if exposing these issues would make her a target? What if she lost everything, not just her position at Maplewood, but also the trust of those she cared for? The weight of potential retribution loomed large, darkening her resolve, even as it illuminated her purpose. She paused, her heart racing. Decisions loomed closer, and Emily felt the moment of truth approaching. Would she solidify her role as an advocate for the children, or would the shadows of her fears swallow her whole? As she stepped into the daylight, her pulse quickened. The time had come to face not just the institution, but the very depths of her own resolve. The questions now intensified, but one response blazed clear. She would confront whatever lay ahead, come what may. What awaited her in the confrontation was uncertain. But she knew one thing. She would not back down now. And as Emily continued her journey, a disquieting whisper emerged from the recess of her thoughts. What if uncovering the truth about Maplewood meant unearthing a dangerous secret she wasn't prepared to handle? Emily's pulse thudded against her temples as she stepped away from Mrs. Henderson's classroom, the weight of the conversation still heavy in her chest. Determination seeped through her veins, igniting a flame of resolve that burned brightly amidst the lingering doubts. The thought of unearthing the truth about the mismanagement at Maplewood had shifted from a daunting task to a mission, yet mixed with that exhilaration was a twinge of fear. She could feel the invisible eyes of scrutiny already upon her. She sculpted a plan in her mind, each decision a carved step leading deeper into the murky waters she was now thrust into. Emily needed allies, but how could she approach her colleagues without further isolating herself? Trust, she recognized, was both a delicate currency and a powerful weapon. Back at her desk, she sorted through her notes from the previous day's meeting, each line a reminder of her commitment, not only to the children, but also to her principles. She had crossed a threshold, and the lingering questions from Mrs. Henderson echoed like chants in her mind. Was she brave enough to amplify the voices of those who felt silenced? Would her ideas resonate beyond her personal fears? As she considered the next steps, her inbox beeped. A message from Marcus, a fellow teacher whom she had always considered a friend, but knew little of his stance on the board's actions. She hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard, her heart racing. Reaching out to him could either fortify her position or expose her vulnerability. Her mind raced over the possibilities while her instincts clashed with her ambition. "Emily, are you there?" The message flashed up again, pulling her from her contemplation. "Yeah, just thinking. What's up?" She typed back, each word laced with apprehension. "Do you have time to chat? I've been hearing things around here." A flutter of anxiety danced in her stomach. What did he know? Was there more gossip circulating about the discrepancies she'd uncovered? She agreed to meet him, thoughts racing over what he might tell her, and what it might cost. In the teacher's lounge, Marcus greeted her with an intensity that both unnerved and intrigued her. His voice was low, carrying a weight that hinted at an unsettling undercurrent. "I hear you've been asking questions," he began, his gaze steady. "You need to know what you're up against." Intrigued, Emily leaned closer, ready to absorb every detail. "What do you mean?" "It's not just misappropriation," he answered, his eyes narrowing. "There are forces at work here that are bigger than you realize. People don't just fall silent because they're afraid. There are consequences for speaking up, especially if you start digging where you shouldn't." Each word landed heavily on her chest, a stark reminder of the risk she faced. Emily felt the momentum shift. It was not only her career at stake, it was also the integrity of the institution she so dearly wanted to protect. "What are you suggesting? Should I back down?" "I'm saying you need to be ready. If you're going to do this, you've got to be smart about it," Marcus advised, leaning back, his posture a blend of concern and resignation. "Find a way to gather evidence without exposing yourself. You don't want to be cornered where you can't retreat." Listening closely, she felt a mix of admiration for Marcus's willingness to open up and frustration at the dire reality he painted. Every aspect of her resolve warred against the shadows creeping around the edges of her consciousness. Would integrity require her to accept the status quo? Determination solidified within her. "I won't back down," she stated fiercely, surprising even herself. "But thank you for the warning. I need to be strategic." As they parted ways, her thoughts whirled, constantly striving for clarity amid the uncertainty. She felt heightened awareness of the stakes involved, and the realization of what genuine courage meant. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to act in its presence. Emily returned to her office, the weight of her next move pressing against her. Would she gather more evidence? Or would she confront the board and risk losing everything for the sake of the truth? A thought flickered in the back of her mind, a chilling echo of the shadows that loomed. What if Marcus's warning indicated threats that were more tangible than whispers? Who was watching her, ready to pounce at the first sign of dissent? As she sat in silence, steeling her thoughts for the challenges ahead, the vivid reality of her struggle settled like a cloak around her shoulders. The next step had to be calculated, and yet the ticking clock added a sense of urgency that she could not ignore. In that moment, she knew. Every second counted, and the fight had only just begun. But the darkness whispered once more, warning her of the potential peril ahead, with trust hanging in the balance. Little did she know that the answers she sought might uncover a hidden danger within herself that she was utterly unprepared to confront. Emily sat at her desk, the hum of the fluorescent lights above resonating like a metronome, counting down the moments she had left to decide her next steps. The day stretched before her, each hour a weighty reminder of the growing gap between her aspirations and the ominous realities that hovered like vultures over Maplewood. Above all, the conversation with Marcus replayed in her mind, its implications burrowing deeper into her subconscious. There were consequences, and she would need to navigate her course with supreme caution. She clenched her jaw, thoughts racing between organization and hesitation. Gathering evidence felt essential, but how could she accomplish that without raising suspicions? Uncertainty prickled at the edges of her resolve. To be exposed would mean not only risking her position at the school, but also compromising everything she stood for. Suddenly, the tension in her mind coalesced, leading her to a definitive path. She had noticed discrepancies in the budget reports when she had been involved in meetings with the finance committee. The specifics had begun as whispers, but had morphed into unmistakable patterns. Money intended for student resources had mysteriously evaporated. This was the angle she could pursue, the potential evidence that might illuminate a broader truth. With renewed focus, Emily outlined her plan. She would revisit the financial documents, carefully dissecting them for anomalies. Armed with a highlighter, she would note any entries that felt suspect. Perhaps she could even engage a few trusted colleagues to discreetly probe further. As she commenced her analysis, the weight of her actions felt profound. Each number she scrutinized tethered her closer to a mission larger than herself. With every highlighted line, she fortified her determination. Emily was becoming the architect of her own resistance, even amidst the encroaching doubts. There was something empowering in challenging the darkness that had enveloped her colleagues. Just as she was starting to lose herself in the figures, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Rachel, another teacher she had deemed trustworthy, but about whom she had recently begun to feel uncertain. "Can we talk? I have something that might help," the text read. This was the opening Emily had hoped for. Rachel could be a valuable ally if she had noticed something amiss, but that also meant placing her trust on another precarious thread. Was Rachel's intention pure? Or could this be a risky gambit that would expose Emily even more? Her fingers danced hesitantly over the screen as she composed a reply. "Sure, what's up? I'll meet you in the lounge." With every second that passed, her pulse quickened. In that moment, she stood on the precipice of vulnerability and potential alliance, consciously weighing the risks. As they met in the lounge, Rachel's demeanor radiated an urgency that made Emily's heart race. "I've seen the discrepancies, too," she began, her voice a low whisper. "And I've heard things. Just last week, I overheard a conversation that made me think this isn't just about mismanagement. There are people at stake." The gravity of her words landed heavily on Emily. She leaned closer, almost instinctively, entranced and alarmed by the magnitude of what Rachel might disclose. "What do you mean? Who exactly?" "It seems there might be people opposing the changes in the financial management that have been discussed." Just then, A sharp buzz sounded in the air, the school's announcement system kicking on abruptly, rattling the tension between them. Over the intercom, the principal's voice echoed, sounding eerily formal. "Attention, staff. We would like to remind everyone that the school board will be conducting a surprise audit next week. All documentation must be made available." Emily felt ice seep into her veins. Did they know someone was questioning their management? Was this their response to deter any scrutiny? The implications were painful. They were tightening the noose around her ambitions. Torn between the confusion of Rachel's words and the imminent threat of the audit, she realized that now more than ever, she needed to tread carefully. The battle lines were drawn, but she understood now that they ran deeper than mere numbers. They penetrated to the very fabric of trust within Maplewood. As the room hummed with the fallout of the announcement, Emily felt an unfamiliar fire in her chest. The risks were spiraling, and clarity was elusive, yet her resolve only deepened. What was lurking in this web of deception? She was about to find out, and the foundations of her convictions would soon be tested more than she had anticipated. Emily's thoughts raced like a hare caught in a snare, each new detail weaving a tighter web of dread around her ambitions. The intercom's final words echoed long after the announcement had ended, leaving her with a palpable sense of dread. Her instinct screamed at her to be cautious, to retreat into the familiar safety of her daily routine. Yet, an undeniable surge of adrenaline fueled her resolve. People opposing the changes, Rachel had said. What did that mean? Were they allies, or were they complicit in a scheme Emily barely understood? Frustrated by the ambiguity, she couldn't help but feel exposed. A lone player on a vast, shifting chessboard where the stakes had just risen beyond her initial expectations. Weighing her options became an internal battle that mirrored the chaos around her. If she pressed forward, the risk of discovery could unravel everything she was working toward. But to retreat would mean silencing her moral compass, betraying not only herself but also the students and colleagues depending on her resolve. She needed clarity, and in that moment, her instinct led her to one conclusion. She required information, knowledge that could either bind or liberate her from the looming shadows. Maybe it's time to bring in some reinforcements. The thought felt both exhilarating and frightening. Engaging others in her quest could either strengthen her position or lead to her undoing. Trust had become a fragile commodity amid the swirling uncertainties of Maplewood. Grappling with that reality, she decided to reach out to Greg, another teacher she had often shared insights with. He had a knack for digging into details, and his analytical mind could help decipher the growing complexities. Sending him a quick text, Emily typed cautiously, "Can we meet? I need to discuss something important." The response came quicker than anticipated. "Of course. Dinner at my place later? I'm interested." Her heart fluttered at the prospect of collaboration, but also quickened with anxiety. The last thing she wanted was for this conversation to slip into gossip, producing another layer of risk. The day dragged on, each hour defined by an ever-present urgency. She found herself resetting her focus, returning to the financial documents that had ignited her initial inquiries. Each line was a potential ticket into understanding not just the problem at hand, but the undercurrents of emotions and ambitions circulating within the school. This was no longer just about finances. It was about power dynamics, misappropriation, and a potential conspiratorial network concealed within the seemingly mundane. Later that evening, seated across from Greg at his dinner table, Emily felt a weight lifted, if only momentarily. He was receptive and eager, his curiosity palpable as he leaned in. "What's going on, Em? You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders." His probing gaze forced her to confront her fears head-on. "I've noticed discrepancies in fund usage, and an audit is looming. Rachel found out about potential resistance from within the school. It's all connected, Greg." As the words spilled forth, Greg listened intently, his brow furrowing with concern. If they're against the audit, it suggests something deeper is happening. We can't be complacent. Emily nodded, sensing the moment shift. She was not in this fight alone. With Greg's support, a glimmer of hope emerged, a possibility that they could uncover the truth together. Fueled by camaraderie, they strategized for the upcoming audit. Sheets of paper sprawled across the table as they mapped out discrepancies and the possible ramifications. Yet their discussions also danced on the edge of tension, revealing a conduit of doubt. Could they truly trust each other not to falter in the heat of this revelation? As the evening drew to a close, Emily felt both invigorated and apprehensive. The pieces were beginning to fall into place, but with every answer, new questions arose like clouds gathering before a storm. The peril grew heavier, yet she knew she couldn't afford to back down now. What would the audit reveal, and how deeply were they enmeshed in this lie? The coming week was approaching with a fierce intensity, and Emily could feel its implications at the pit of her stomach. The battle was imminent, and in that looming darkness, she could feel their collective fate beginning to crystallize. Where would their investigative journey lead them? And would she find the backbone necessary to confront the menacing truths hidden within? Emily stared at the clock on Greg's wall, each tick amplifying the tension in her chest. She had traded the relative safety of routine for the uncharted waters of conspiracy, and now the hours until the audit loomed like a thunderstorm on the horizon. Uncertainty coursed through her veins, yet a growing sense of determination propelled her forward. She had decided to act, and there was no going back. "Let's start with the key players," Greg suggested, breaking her reverie. He drew a line down a notepad, creating 2 columns labeled allies and opponents. Emily felt a flicker of appreciation for Greg's clear-headed approach, yet anxiety clouded her focus as the realization hit. Who could she truly trust? Rachel seems reliable, but... Emily hesitated, memories of their last conversation swirling in her mind. Was Rachel another move on this treacherous chessboard? She's tangled in this too. Let's not assume the worst. We can only work with what we know, Greg replied, careful to maintain a steady tone. How about we gather information on the fund discrepancies first? We need facts to navigate the murky waters ahead. Emily nodded, her focus sharpening. They delved into a complex web of financial statements and historical budget allocations, hunting for anomalies. As they worked together in the comforting glow of Greg's living room, Emily felt a sense of partnership blossom. The weight of their enterprise was daunting, yet their shared purpose steeled her resolve. After hours of poring over documents, she found herself immersed in a revelation. One entry, an unusually high expenditure marked as contractual services, stood out. It had no coherent description and increased suspiciously over the years. Could it be slush funds or something more sinister? Her breath quickened, realization dawning. This could be it. We need to confirm where this money's going. If they're funding something illicit... Greg leaned in, eyes wide with understanding. This is why there's opposition to the audit. Someone's benefiting. If we can expose it, we might create a rift among the conspirators. The prospect of actual change, of shedding light on a dark truth, invigorated Emily. Yet mixed with that adrenaline was a ripple of fear. Would they be able to tread carefully without drawing dangerous attention to themselves? As the midnight hour approached, Emily's exhaustion hovered, but she pushed through. Her mind turned to the students, and she felt that familiar fire ignite within her, a promise to protect them from an institution that might betray them. The fight wasn't just about the finances. It was about integrity, empowerment, and the kind of educational environment she wanted to foster. Minutes turned into hours until she finally collapsed onto Greg's couch, expression strained with fatigue. We've made progress, but it feels so fragile. What if someone catches wind of our research? "You're overthinking it," Greg reassured her, though his eyes held a flicker of concern. "We're in this for the right reasons. Our focus has to be on uncovering the truth." Emily took a deep breath, the stakes clearer than ever before. She knew now that she had to challenge not just the external threats, but the internal doubts that haunted her. If she truly believed in her vision, she must embrace this uncertainty, not shy away from it. As the dawn's first light broke through the window, illuminating the chaotic remnants of their night's work, Emily felt more resolute than ever. Slowly, possibilities sprouted around her like fresh blooms, yet there lingered a persistent question. How far would they have to go to unravel the full extent of this deception? The day of the audit was inching closer, and with it, the unpredictable abyss of confrontation awaited. Could Emily summon the relentless courage that would propel her toward the truth? Or would she falter when faced with those who wanted to remain hidden? Her phone buzzed suddenly, jolting her out of contemplation. It was a message from Rachel. "We need to talk. I have some information that could change everything." Emily's heart raced again, a mixture of anxiety and trepidation flooding her senses. What could Rachel know? And was it enough to expose the darkness that threatened to consume them all? Emily's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the message. Those 7 words felt like an electric spark, igniting a cascade of possibilities and fears. She and Rachel had often relied on each other's instincts, but uncertainty hung between them like a thick fog. Could she trust Rachel's instincts this time? "Greg, I need to meet with Rachel," Emily announced, her voice steadier than she felt. She might have the missing piece of the puzzle. "Be careful," Greg warned, concern etching his features. "You don't know what kind of information she's willing to divulge, or if it's a trap." Emily nodded, understanding the wisdom behind his words. The thought of walking into a potential ambush gnawed at her, but the need for clarity outweighed her fear. "I can't ignore this. Everything hinges on what we uncover." She grabbed her bag and quickly scribbled a note to Greg, an assurance to let him know she was proceeding cautiously. The fresh air outside felt chilly, a stark contrast to the warm glow of determination that thrummed within her. The short drive to their usual coffee shop was filled with internal dialogue. Emily reviewed the times they had shared secrets over steaming cups of coffee, their conversations oscillating between personal struggles and lofty dreams. But today felt different, charged with a sense of impending revelation. As she entered the cafe, she spotted Rachel in a quiet corner, her fingers tapping nervously against her phone. There was a tension in the air, vibrating like a taut string ready to snap. Emily took a deep breath and approached, ready to confront whatever truths lay ahead. "Rachel?" she greeted, sliding into the seat across from her. "What's going on?" Rachel looked up, her expression unreadable. "I've been doing some digging of my own," she began, her tone low. "There's more to this situation than we thought." "And?" The anticipation clung heavily to Emily's words. "The contractual services you found?" Rachel leaned in closer, her voice a whisper. "I found out that money has been linked to certain individuals, people in higher positions, people who have a lot to lose." Emily's stomach churned. "Are you saying they're running a scam?" "Possibly. There are connections to vendors that don't even seem to exist. Payments made but no services rendered. If we could trace this back to their accounts." Rachel paused, fear flashing in her eyes. "We could expose them. But if they catch us—" As Emily processed the implications of Rachel's findings, the weight of the situation pressed down hard. A decision crystallized in her mind. She could either step back and play it safe, or plunge into the fight where stakes were high, and the potential for both discovery and disaster loomed large. "Rachel, we can't back down now. If this is as serious as it sounds, we need to gather evidence and prepare ourselves for blowback." Emily asserted, resolve swelling within her. Rachel's face was a mask of uncertainty, yet Emily could see a flicker of agreement. I know. What if we're wrong? Emily took a moment and steadied herself, weighing the potential fallout. We've come too far to stop now. We owe it to the students, to ourselves. But we need a plan and a way to protect ourselves. As they continued to strategize, Emily could feel the fire igniting once again within her. Each new piece of information was like a thread in a fine tapestry, weaving a narrative that could either lead to unraveling the conspiracy or ensnaring them deeper in its web. After an intense hour of conversation and brainstorming, Rachel leaned back in her chair, visibly shaken, yet invigorated by the possibilities. What do we do next? Emily locked her gaze onto Rachel, determination coursing through her veins. Next, we gather more information. We find out exactly who is involved and how deeply they've infiltrated this institution. Then we decide how to expose it. A tremor ran up her spine at the gravity of their mission. They were no longer just two educators. They were becoming agents of change, risking everything for a greater good. Just as Emily began to feel momentum, her phone buzzed again, but this time it was a call from Greg. As she answered, a knot of anxiety tightened in her chest. Emily, you need to come back immediately. It's bad. They're already making moves. The weight of dread further cemented her resolve. With each step into the unknown, Emily stood at the precipice of a decision that would alter the course of her professional life and challenge the very core of her personal beliefs. Tomorrow was the audit, but today was about survival, advocacy, and mastering her own fears. With the stakes rising, she knew one thing. The time had come to face the hidden truths, clamoring for revelation. Could she hold strong amidst the chaos, or would the pressure finally snap her resolve? Emily stepped out of the cafe, her heart racing from the unsettling conversation with Rachel. Greg's message echoed in her mind, a heavy reminder of the urgency pressing down on her. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting shadows that danced on the pavement as she drove back, every tick of the clock amplifying her anxiety. What had she gotten herself into? Questions spiraled around her thoughts, each one tightening the grip of uncertainty. Focus, she urged herself. You need to think clearly. If they were onto something potentially devastating, failing to act could mean jeopardizing not just her career, but the integrity of the institution they worked tirelessly to protect. As she parked at school, Emily took a moment to breathe. She needed to gather herself, calm her racing heart, and sharpen her mind. Before heading inside, she thought about the purpose of their inquiry. She wasn't out for revenge or recognition. They owed it to the students. It was about principles, about transparency in a world that appeared to thrive on secrecy. Inside, the quiet of the empty hallways felt suffocating. Emily felt the walls close in as she approached her office. She turned the doorknob and stopped abruptly, her pulse quickening at the sight of Greg, his face pale and taut with worry. "Emily," he began, his voice grave. "They're moving faster than we thought. We need to act now." "What do you know?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with urgency. She settled into her chair, supporting herself against the desk as if it could absorb some of the tension radiating from her. "It's not just about the contracts," Greg replied, running a hand through his hair. "There's been talk of shredding documents related to the funds. They're desperate. And I overheard. They could be planning to blame both of you." The implication struck Emily like a punch to the gut. "Blame us? For what? We're just trying to—" "I know what you're trying to do, but if they link you to any investigation, they'll target you first," he interrupted, the steel in his voice sending a chill down her spine. "Squeaky wheels get greased or silenced. You need to cover your tracks." She closed her eyes for a moment, weighing the danger against her resolve. Then we need to gather everything we have and create a safe space for ourselves. It'll have to be a real plan, hiding in plain sight. Greg nodded, his expression softening. I'm with you. We'll document everything. I know a few safe channels, whistleblower protections, legal advisors. Emily felt a surge of gratitude towards him. They were in this together, and that unity illuminated the uncertainty clouding her thoughts. We need to approach Rachel. She's our best asset right now. He grimaced. Are you sure? There's a chance she could buckle under pressure. You trust her? A hesitation lingered in her response. Trust had always been a two-way street in their relationship, but Emily was aware that stakes had shifted. I know her well, Greg. If she believes in this cause, and I don't think she'll back down now, it can solidify our coalition. But we have to make sure she understands the risks. When she left her office, resolve surged in her veins. She was no longer just an educator but a participant in a dangerous game of truth and betrayal. Each pulse felt like an infusion of strength as she stepped towards Rachel's classroom, her footsteps echoing off the tiles. But when she approached the door, hesitation crept in. What if Rachel was too afraid to commit now that the danger was real? What if she chose self-preservation? Emily knocked, anxiety knotting her stomach. Rachel, she called softly. The door swung open and their eyes locked. There was fear reflected back at her, but also an indomitable spirit lurking beneath the surface. Emily, Rachel said, her voice trembling slightly. I heard back from some contacts and I think I know where the documents are being kept. But I need assurance. Assurance? Emily asked, her heart racing again. Yeah, Rachel replied, a mixture of caution and defiance framing her face. That I won't be left to take the fall if this blows up. I need to know we're in this together. The weight of Rachel's expectations settled heavily on Emily. Could she guarantee safety in a situation fraught with peril? The challenge to lead mingled with doubts of loyalty and fear. But a spark of determination ignited in Emily as she answered. Together. That's our only option now. We fight this. With those words, she stepped across the threshold, embracing both danger and conviction. The next step was not just crucial. It was the beginning of an irrevocable transformation. How deep did the corruption run? And would they be strong enough to unveil it before it swallowed them whole? Emily stood at the precipice of her journey, transformed by the weeks of tension and uncertainty that had culminated in a palpable resolve. As she navigated the familiar halls of Maplewood Academy, each step felt imbued with purpose. No longer trapped by the shadows of doubt, she had decisively reclaimed her voice, not just for herself, but for every student and colleague affected by the institution's machinations. With Rachel by her side, the duo had seamlessly integrated their strengths into a formidable alliance. Emily's research, paired with Rachel's connections, unveiled layers of deception thick with corruption. As knowledge emerged, the weight of the challenge ahead transformed into a strong undercurrent of empowerment. Their moments of collaboration brimming with laughter and camaraderie rejuvenated Emily's weary spirit amidst the daunting task ahead. Preparations for the audit intensified, and Emily drew from the depths of her accumulated resolve. She meticulously documented findings with newfound clarity, ensuring that every detail was corroborated by evidence and testimonies, units of truth to dismantle the walls of deceit erected by the administration. It became increasingly clear to her that this was not just about financial discrepancies. It was about the integrity of education itself, a mission that transcended her personal fears. On the day of the audit, Emily felt an electric tension in the air. Faculty members shuffled nervously. Whispers dripped with speculation. But she stood firm, radiating quiet confidence. As the auditors arrived, she gauged their expressions, observing the steely professionalism they exuded. It was time to confront not only the institutional rot, but also her own fears. She was no longer the girl haunted by her past. She was an educator determined to ensure that tomorrow's leaders received the truth they deserved. Unfolding her meticulously prepared presentation, every statistic and testimonial fell seamlessly into place, converting murmurs of skepticism into engaged attentiveness. She shared her findings logically, methodically dissecting the misappropriations before a room of astonished faces. In that moment, she comprehended the breadth of her courage. She was no longer voicing fears, but unraveling truth, proving the importance of integrity within education. As the auditors absorbed her revelations, the room buzzed with concern and astonishment, giving Emily the recognition she had always sought. She felt her stature within that space shift. She was no longer an underdog. She was a beacon of accountability. In the aftermath, the audit led to a cascade of investigative actions that unraveled the web of deceit. Emily had become the catalyst for change, and the administration was held accountable for the chaos they had wrought. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly remain complicated, they would navigate it with renewed clarity and unity. Days passed, but the acknowledgement of Emily's efforts catalyzed something profound within her. As she stood in front of her class, the smattering of artwork and projects flickering cheer in the bright classroom, she realized that she was not just a teacher. She was a protector, advocate, and a credible force for change. With newfound vigor, she sought to inspire her students not just to learn, but to challenge and inquire. Shaping the next generation of thinkers and leaders, each day would be a chance, an opportunity to instill values of courage and integrity, an embodiment of her father's legacy. Reflection upon her triumphs mingled with her past, transforming shadows of insecurities into a luminous beacon of confidence. Emily had metamorphosed into a figure of empowerment, not only for her students and colleagues, but ultimately for herself, proving that the whispers of judgment could be silenced by the sound of truth. In the grand journey of her life, Emily had reclaimed her narrative, confronting complexities with assuredness. A solid sense of achievement coursed through her. She had embarked on a path of purpose that would resonate well beyond her classroom walls. Determined, she embraced each new day, confident in her resolve to guide, to challenge, and to uphold the sanctity of education. And with this triumphant culmination, she understood. The power to change systems began within, fueled by courage, unwavering determination, and a belief that truth, however hidden, had a powerful way of surfacing. The shadows no longer haunted her. They stood behind her, reminders of a past she had conquered. Emily's evolution was proof of authentic growth, leading her not merely to personal and professional fulfillment, but to a broader responsibility she embraced wholeheartedly. Now she was ready to advocate not only for her students, but for every whispering voice yearning to be heard. The battle had been won, but the fight for integrity in education was just beginning. Transform your own journey and support the channel now. Don't let insightful stories like this slip through your fingers. Subscribe immediately to keep receiving powerful narratives of personal transformation that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, ensuring these stories reach those who need them most. Comment below your thoughts and reactions. Let your voice be part of this community. And share this video with at least 5 friends. True fans of personal overcoming understand the importance of spreading inspiration. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.